Welcome to Bator International's Classic Online Motorcycle Sales. We're continuing on with the restoration of the 1957 Harley Davidson XL Sportster. We are trying to get her wrapped up for the Las Vegas auction. The bike's going to go over the block. And right now we are about 40 days out for the actual auction date. We have the engine, as you can see, complete, ready to be installed. And over here we have the chassis painted. I've got the swing arms over here. I don't know if you can see them or not. Yeah, they're leaning out, or hanging off of that engine stand. All the rest of the black products ready to go. So we're going to go ahead and start assembly on the chassis, and then we'll go ahead and throw the engine in and continue on. The first thing that we're going to want to do to get the chassis ready for the engine install is to go ahead and install the rear swing arm and scrape off all the paint where the engine is going to meet the frame as far as the front motor mounts, because again, you don't want this this paint film to get in the way of the actual mounting of everything. We'll go ahead and install our bearing cups and also our kickstand and kickstand spring. This all wants to go on before the engine gets installed. All right, we're getting ready to slide the rear swing arm on, and here's all the components. Got them all laid out for you. As you can see by the manual here, other than this axle sitting there, there you have it. Now just make sure that you clean up all your threads on all your shafts. Make sure that everything fits properly before you go to install it. Last thing you want to do is force this axle into the position. So what I did was I took my Dremel and I went ahead and cleaned out the holes to make sure that I had a good slip fit on the axle, because a lot of grime does build up in there. Gets a little rust and whatnot through the years. So again, just make sure everything is good and clean, and it all slides in without any abuse or any obstruction. So again, it's a little tight, but it fits just like it should. A little lubrication, that'll slide right in. So make sure you have your new bearings, races, dust cups on the back. And also make sure you clean all the threads out on the actual front of your swing arm. And also make sure you run your outer nuts into the threads all the way to make sure that there is no obstruction there, because you don't want to force this thing. And again, if there's any dirt or anything in it, it's going to create havoc. So take your time, clean it out, make sure it's all done right. So next step is we'll go ahead and get this installed, and we'll take it from there. The first thing that I do when I go to install the swing arm is I go ahead and knock the bearing races in with my bearing race and bearing driver, and I leave a little bit of space. I don't go all the way to the inside surface of this, because you have to install your dust shield. So you leave it about 1/8 of an inch shy of the end, and then I install the dust shield, and it should flush out with the back side of the inside of the swing arm pivot axle. So once you do that, then you go ahead and you install it on your frame to make sure you have a good slip fit. And once you have that established, then you can go ahead and start assembling the rest of the bearings and so on. In the lineup of all the swing arm parts that I had mentioned here, I forgot to include these in the lineup. These are the spacers 47518-52 that go in between the bearing and the inner dust shield. So basically, the inner dust shield, you would have your spacer there. So make sure you install those. Okay, there you have it, one swing arm installed. The actual service manual tells you to weigh the back of your swing arm and then put enough drag on your bearings that you're adding about 1 more pound of lift or to the lift of your rear swing arm. But basically, if you go ahead and tighten it up, give it a little bit of a, what can you see, feel a little bit of resistance, the swing arm is set properly. You can go ahead and divot your your nut here if you want to lock it in place. And you'll also adjust all of your nuts for the proper tightness and tension, and then go ahead and put your little locking washer on here with a round-headed screw and an external tooth washer there. So basically that's it. One swing arm installed. Now that we have the engine completed, I went ahead and laid it on its side. I cleaned up the bottom side of the engine cases as they were a little bit dirty. So we've got that all dialed in and ready to go. So I put it on its side because this is how we're going to install the frame. We're going to install it over the actual engine while it sits on its side. The frame, I have it prepped now with the swing arm on it, because you want to make sure you have the swing arm on, because this little spacer sets into the little slot on the back side of the engine right here. So you want to make sure you have that horizontal on the frame when you go to install it. Either that or you're going to be monkeying around trying to get this thing to fit in. And as you can see, I put a bunch of rags all around the frame section, because again, trying to install the frame over the engine single-handedly is a little bit difficult, but you can get it done. I also have the side stand mounted with the pin and the screw on the bottom, so that's all ready to go, and it's just much easier to do it prior to installing the engine. You can do it afterwards, but it's a pain in the butt. I also installed the bearing cups just for health's sake. And you can also see where I've scraped all the paint off of the mating surface for when the rear motor mount matches up to the frame. And those will be the 4 bolts that I'll install to secure the engine into the frame. After you get those 4 in, you can actually set the frame in its proper position, and then go ahead and install the rest of the motor mounts after that. So let's go ahead and get started on installing the frame. And if I can set up the camera, I will, but if not, you'll just have to see the finished product thereafter. Another thing that I do want to mention is make sure you have some wooden blocks that for support when you do go to install the frame over the engine, because again, if you need to support it, this is can be an extra set of hands right there. So the only thing I need to do right now is to go ahead and get the little nut or whatever horizontal on the frame, because again, you want to make that up with the engine case, as you can see over here. If it's not perfectly horizontal, it doesn't fit, and then you're going to be monkeying around trying to get it lined up for the install, and you want to make it as easy as possible for you. So here's my 2 upper motor mount bolts, my 2 lowers, 1038 CPs, and also Parkerized with lock washers. They're going to mate right up to that. And I also double checked all the screw, the threads and everything, to make sure that everything is fitting up nicely, so we have absolutely no problem. Since I'm going to be installing the frame, we're only going to get one shot at this, so hopefully this will work out so you can watch me make a mess of this. Okay, stand by. It's getting there, hang with me. We got her started. Well, she's in. Hey, caramba, that was a pain in the butt. Anyhow, the two lower bolts, as you can see, got them started. The upper one is started and is threading nicely. Let's grab the last one. See if we can slide her on in. Yep, starting without an issue. Terrific. So I'm going to tighten these four up, and then I'll be able to stand or set the frame up in its upper position, and voila, one engine and frame. I'm a happy guy. We're getting ready to stand the engine up. I just wanted to give you the view of the chassis with the motor now installed with the rear four motor mount bolts. Now, a lot of times you'll find that these rags that you put onto your frame to protect the paint sometimes get stuck. So you sometimes have to end up cutting these back out of the way. So hopefully I'll be able to slide these out. But if not, we'll get the scissors out. So next thing we'll do is we'll stand it up, and we'll start working on the rest of the motor mounts. But I think it went pretty darn well, pretty smooth. One of the problems that I was having is the little nut for the swing arm pivot moved, so I had to go back in and sort of line it up to fit into the slot. And once that fit into the slot, it dropped right into place. So, on to the next steps. Now that we have the engine installed in the frame, we can go in all kinds of different directions to start reassembling the bike. We can put our triple trees on, front motor mounts, of course. That's the next step for me. I'm actually painting the front mounts right now because the ones I had wasn't real happy with. So I'm reshooting those, and we can start hanging some of the other components like the oil tank backing plate and the seat plungers, get that in. The rear fender struts are actually out at the plater right now, so I'm going to have to wait for those to come back. And the top motor mount, let's talk about this. You have 1038 CP bolts here, 1, 2, 3, and they are CAD plated. Now, if you look in the parts manual, you'll see that the washer, they say, goes on top of this motor mount plate, which it does not. It goes underneath it. So when you go to mount this up, make sure the washer goes down below, then the plate, and then the 1038 CP bolt, all CAD plated. And there is no washer underneath the heads of these bolts here. Now, the center bolt, it goes to the motor mount that runs over to the where it's going to bolt up to the frame. As you can see down below, it takes a real fat washer, and also the locking nut. And then this is actually the lever for the choke for the 57. Now, between the early and lates, they had two different positions for this. They had it, I believe, on the early ones, they were set back like this, and on the later ones, they were set and came out this area in the front of the bracket itself. So, just a little footnote there. Yeah, we were very, very lucky. We didn't scratch any of the paint, didn't ding anything. It turned out perfect on the install of the engine. So, happy that that happened. So we'll go ahead and continue on with the reassembly. And again, we'll start hanging some of the subcomponents on the frame as well. While my motor mounts are still, what can I say, kicking off, drying over here. I got some black primer on them right now. I'll sand those down and give them a good shot of the catalyzed paint in the can that I use as soon as they do dry. But while that's happening, I'm going to go ahead and install the triple trees. I've got my bearing cups in, and I have my bearings. It's 15 on the top, 15 on the bottom. I always suggest putting in brand new bearings anytime you go to mess with these. And we have the lower triple tree with the race, and then we'll go ahead and grease the bottom cup, stick all the bearings in there, shove that up in there. 15 bearings on the top, and then we go ahead and put the upper bearing race in like so. And then we have, this is 3 pieces here. You've got the shield, and then the top screw that screws onto the triple tree, and then the top nut that goes in there. So this will basically be set up just like that with the upper triple tree slid on and over this collet here. So we'll go ahead and get that done and then move on to the next step. We now have the bearings installed on the top and on the bottom. So we're going to go ahead and grab Mr. Lower Triple Tree. And again, I'm going to try to do this one-handed, so I'll probably have to set this down here in a minute. Carefully install it. Make sure it beds down there and feels good, which it does. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and install my upper race. And it comes with the bearing shield and the top collet. Pick up the camera again. So there we have it. We have the lower on installed, has the dust shield up on the top, and then basically you tighten this here to get your tension on your actual bearing itself. And you just do that by feel. Make sure you don't have any play in it whatsoever, but don't cram it down to where it's binding on the bearings itself. So once we have that done, then we'll go ahead and slide Mr. Top Triple Tree on top of it like so, and we'll have that portion of it done. One other item you cannot forget is this little spacer. A lot of people want to put it on top of the triple tree, which is incorrect. So you place it right on top of your dust shield, and then go ahead and install your upper triple tree. I'll see if I can go ahead and get it installed while you're watching, and I've already adjusted my tension on my bearings. Okay. That's installed. Okay. Then we'll go ahead and put the top cap on like so, and no washer goes underneath it. Come on. There we go. Once you draw down, put a little bit of tension on this here, and then go ahead and tighten up your pinch nut. But you can actually leave all this loose until you get your fork legs in, and then go ahead and line everything up and tighten everything down. Now that we have the triple tree in place, we went ahead and installed all of the items here for the fork tensioner. I'll go around and show it to you. As you can see here, the lower section here, you have what I'll call the center barrel with this slot that is held in place with this bolt. And it's a long bolt that only has thread on half of the shaft. And there's an internal tooth shake-proof washer there. All of that is CAD. And then underneath that, you have the star washer, and then the hold-down plate, and then the fiber washer itself, or the fiber tensioner. And then you'd have the shaft that runs up to the top, and then you go ahead and screw down your top unit here, and then basically you have your top cap. I think there's a nut that goes underneath this, but basically that gets screwed on there. So that's all done and happy there. And then you also have this bolt here, 1038 CP with, you can always tell this bolt because it has a hole in it, but basically it just gets a washer and a nut, and that basically holds that all down. So we'll go ahead and now work on the all the items to hold the rubber boots in place on the lower triple tree section. Okay, things are starting to come together. We just got done installing all of the items here for the rubber boots to clamp on. And the screws, let me see if I can find them. This is an 832 round-headed by ½ inch screw that mounts up right here with a nut and an internal shake-proof washer again. So we've got the breather tubes, the fronts, then we had the gasket between the actual plate here and the holding unit here. So it goes plate, gasket, and then the lower unit itself. And then after that, you take your felts, shove them up in the hole, and you're good to go. Now that we have the triple trees installed, I went ahead and mounted the speedometer and the 2 ignition switches. The switch on the right is for your ignition, the one on the left is for your headlight. And when you go to mount these plates, make sure you mount them below the actual casting of the triple tree here, because if not, they're going to be set too high and it will not allow your top tin to seat properly on your fork nuts. These key switches are getting very, very rare, very expensive to buy. There is a gentleman that's actually reproducing the actual switch brackets, so you can buy these things. I've seen them up on eBay. Can't remember what the costs are. So the next step, we'll either go ahead and throw the fork tubes in, or maybe fall back and install the seat post springs and all the pogo parts, or maybe also mount the oil tank. But she's definitely getting heavier and looking very nice. Well, all of a sudden it's starting to look more like a motorcycle. I went ahead and slipped the front forks on, as you can see. Don't forget to put your rubber boots on. Make sure you have your felts underneath the cups here. And also make sure that you clean out the lower triple tree legs so that these fork tubes are a nice slip fit. If not, you're going to be fighting it all the way. So a little bit of a sanding Dremel, a little bit of a polish or buff with a little bit of sandpaper. Allow those forks to slide all the way up. And right now I just have some temporary caps on it just so I can draw the fork tube all the way up into the upper triple tree, so I can go ahead and tighten down my pinch nuts, or should I say pinch bolts. And also on this rubber boots, just make sure you have the seam directly on the side of the actual fork leg itself when you go to put them on. And of course it just lips over the top, no zip ties, no nothing. And this just mounts right over the bottom of this little ring lip here, I guess what you'd call it. So again, we have the forks on, ta-da, and we'll just continue to hang these parts on. So probably next, I think we'll go and maybe put the brake tube in, maybe slide the axle on, maybe even install the front fender, but I think I'll leave that off for a little while because I don't want to get it scratched while we're doing all the rest of the work. So maybe on to the seat posts. The next item that I installed was the backing plate for the oil tank. Now let's talk about this for a minute. You have the plate, and you also have the hold down for the battery, and then the hold down rod here, okay? Now when you go to install this, make sure that you have this in place, and you take the two 7/16 headed bolts and run those up and just make them snug. And then go ahead and run this bolt through, and again, just tighten it up but loosely. You don't want to tighten it all the way down before you crank all these up, or these two up in the top, because a lot of times you'll come across these brackets and these are all busted, and what happens is the people tighten this one down and then they put a load or torque on the top ones, and it puts stress on it. So like I mentioned, just go ahead and tighten these up, but not super tight, but just snug them. And then the same thing here. So once you do that, then you go ahead and you tighten your top ones first, and that'll draw the plate up as high as it needs to be. And then go ahead and bolt this one down, or put it to bed. So go ahead and get that installed properly. And I also installed the rear plate for the rear fender. And again, that has to be Parkerized. All these items have to be Parkerized, not CAD, and definitely not zinc. If you are going to use any modern bolts, make sure that you grind the head of the hash mark off of the actual bolt before you Parkerize or CAD plate them. Not everybody can go out and get 1038 CP. They're sometimes difficult to find. I think Old Dude has them, and also Colony has them, but again, if you're in a pinch, you can grind the heads down, Parkerize them, and install them. So we've got that done. Now I went ahead and I repainted my front motor mount plates. As you can see, it's not a high shine. It's the satin sort of look, and again, it sort of matches the frame, and that's how it should be. It shouldn't be a super shiny finish. So I'm going to go ahead and fit up the motor mounts, and I'll also go ahead and install the oil tank. Now the oil tank I'll probably do later, because I have to put all the new fasteners on it that I've had re-CAD plated. But we'll go over that at another time. So we'll go ahead and get the front motor mounts on now, and again, continue on with the quest. I have the front motor mounts installed now, and let me walk you through on how you go about doing this. There's 3 different size bolts, as you can see here. 1, 2, and 3. You should have 2 of the larger and then 1 each of the shorter ones. The 2 larger or longer bolts go through the frame section right here and right here. Now make sure that you have your stud or your bolt, the special washer, your plate, the spreader tube, another special washer, your motor mount plate, and then you have your pinch nut on the other side. Okay, and that's how you set up the 2 fronts. Now let's talk about the ones that go through the engine case. Again, you have 2 different size bolts for the engine case itself. Use the shortest one that goes through the upper hole and screws into the welded on nut on your right plate. Now if you use the longer one, like this one here, and you go to mount it up, you're very, very close to almost hitting the inside of your right side case or engine case. So make sure you use the shorter one, and when you go to tighten it down, just make sure you have that clearance there. Now the bottom motor mount bolt that you see here gets the special washer, just like these 3, 1, 2, 3. This one does not get the special washer for some reason. So when you go to put this one in, you put the special washer, and it's the only through bolt that gets a special washer on the right hand side, and that's the one that mounts up right in front of your oil pump pressure sending unit. The other 2 do not receive any type of a washer whatsoever, and the nut beds right up against your frame tube right there. So that's how you mount it up. That is the proper way. Everything is Parkerized, no CAD. I have heard that one gentleman told me that this one back here should be CAD plated. I don't have that, what can I say, confirmed as of yet, so that may be incorrect here, maybe CAD. Well, let's talk about the upper motor mount. So now that we have the front motor mount all secured and the rear motor mount secured, it's time to go ahead and mount the upper motor mount with all the spaces and so on. So you make sure you get your crossbar all tight with the proper 1038 CP hardware, the proper spacers. Also with the thick washer back here, pinch nut, and also your choke bracket. So once you have this all mounted and tight, you're going to have a gap between your actual frame and the upper part of your motor mount. So there are special washers, and I'll walk around this side here, that have different thicknesses that you go ahead and you fit up to where it's just a nice press fit. You do not want to force it in, and you don't want any air gaps. So once you have your spacers dialed in, worked out, then go ahead and mount your upper bolt. Goes from the bottom up. And then it also, again, has a very thick washer here to make up for all of the, well, what can I say? You want more meat there to make sure that this thing doesn't vibrate and break. So other than that, pinch bolt at the top, and you're good to go. So the motor is in, and now we'll start hanging more items on it. So we're going to go ahead and call this chapter finished. The next chapter, we'll go ahead and start working on the seat and also some of the wheel items, maybe some of the brake drums and so on. I'm still waiting for some of the chrome to come back from the plater, so as soon as that does come back, I'll be able to get the exhaust on and some of the other fine items that we have. And then we'll go ahead and lace wheels and so on. So again, what did we do this chapter? We went ahead and got all the motor mount plates in, the backing plate for the oil tank, some of the other small sundries like the little bracket here for the rear fender, and also installed the speedometer, key switches, and front forks. So I think this was a very good chapter. And again, I think we're down to about 25 days to get this girl all done for the auction. So onward and upward. And again, thank you very much for watching our videos. Please make sure you hit the like on our YouTube channel, and also go to my website, www.bator, international.com, and check out what we have for sale, and also make sure you subscribe there. Again, thank you very much for watching.